TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Hey, welcome in, gang. My name is Scott Webb, and you are in the batter's box. It's a pretty cool day. It's October the 1st. Major League Baseball playoffs start today after we had a doubleheader yesterday to figure out who was going to make it in. Congratulations to Mets and Braves. So a couple of things I think stand out to me about Major League Baseball this season, and in particular compared to last season. The first thing is last year I think we had three teams that were relatively dominant. I mean, they won 100 games. And this year we had zero. So there's zero teams that won 100 games. So there's a reason I'm saying this, and it starts with the idea that this season there's no standout super teams. The Dodgers are pretty good, but they're not, 115 win type team. And, the Phillies are pretty good, but they're not a 115 type win team. The Yankees, the Orioles, those teams. Nobody's a 100-win team, so I think you got to start with the understanding that there's a lot more parity, and I wouldn't even necessarily say it's parity as much as it's every one of these teams, no matter whether you're looking at the favorites, which are like the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Yankees, those teams, they're all flawed in some way. None of them are like the best there's ever been and the best teams that you've seen in the last 20 years. So I think that's where we have to start, because when you start looking at the numbers and the odds, you go, oh, what's going on? So that's number one. Number two, the teams that made the World Series last year, both the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers, neither team made the playoffs this season. So that says a lot to the idea that the playoffs are a crapshoot. And the reality is these teams you need to get hot. You need to be the stars hitting and the players playing and coming through in the clutch. And you need to have all the things going on, and it doesn't matter which team it is. So you can see a lot of weird things in the playoffs. So just because some teams are pretty dominantly favored over other teams, that doesn't mean that it's going to just be a smooth sailing and here we go. I would say to make sure that we preface everything by the understanding that when you go into this, a 162 game season is a long season, and it's designed for a certain reason. We had a COVID season in 2020, and in 2020 they played 50 games. And in that 2020 season, the Florida Marlins made the playoffs. They got hot, whatever. They had good pitching. They had whatever they had. They won those close games, and they made the playoffs. Okay, great. I mean, in 50 games, you can be that way. That the Los Angeles Angels in 50-game stretches of time have been really good too, and then they all fall apart, right? Well, that's what 162 games does. Is it really weeds out some of those teams that really shouldn't be in the playoffs or aren't the best teams in baseball. Maybe they were just good at a certain time frame. So I like the idea that you have these 162 game seasons with the idea that it weeds through that stuff. But at the same time as that, it doesn't necessarily mean that those teams that make it through those 162 games are built for these short series games either. So this is where the stars shine. This is where the spotlight is on them, and they come through, and that's why they get paid the big bucks. So your guys like Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper and Turner and Castellanos and Bohm, those guys are going to be re-energized. They're going to be full of juice. They're going to be ready to go. Your guys in the Dodgers with Ohtani and Betts and Freeman and those guys are all built for these kinds of moments and these kinds of situations. And you've seen Lindor come through in the clutch in these spots, and the Astros constantly come through with Altuve and Alvarez and Tucker and Bregman and those guys. Well, don't underestimate the value of those players, because they may not have gone through and had their best 162 game seasons, but they don't have to. They made it to this point, and now when they're really relied upon, if you don't have those guys, you're in trouble. So some of these teams are great stories, right? The Kansas City Royals, great story. They are where they are. They have a superstar in Bobby Witt Jr., but they got nothing else, like nothing else. They're the worst hitting offense in all of baseball. So that's going to put them in a deficit, and none of them have ever played playoff baseball before. The Detroit Tigers, similar situations. They got the probable American League Cy Young Award winner in Tyreek Skubal. They got no pitchers after that, and they got a decent bullpen, but we're going to get into that in a second. But the way the bullpen works, that's still not helpful. And offensively, they've been decent, but they can't hit left-handed pitching, and they're going to face left-handed pitching. So, and stars on the other side. So, there's some issues that I don't know that we always think them through when it comes to playoff baseball, because it is way different. It's not the same. It's the managers make a difference. If your manager is a guy that leaves your starting pitcher out there, you're going to lose these games, because every single out, every single at bat is critical to the success of that team winning, and that manager has to be willing to use the right relief pitcher at the right time to get the matchup that he needs, to get the out that he has to have. And then you got to worry about the next out. But you got to have that out first. And some of these managers are really good at that. AJ Hinch, great manager that way. Some of these guys haven't had to deal with that, they've not played or had managerial experience. Even a guy like Brandon Hyde with the Orioles, they won 100 games last year. They made the playoffs. They played 3 games, lost all 3, out they went. So I'm not so sure that you're in a spot here where that you got to think through what you're looking at in the right way. So having prefaced some of this around the idea that playoff baseball is not the same as the regular season, let's look at some of the lines that came out, right, and where we are. So the first thing that I kind of took notice of when I was looking at these things, and I'm pulling up my numbers versus the odds number, and they might have changed a little bit, but the Houston Astros were listed at 145. They're like 145, 150, something like that right now. In the regular season, if you would have had Framber Valdez against Skubal in this type scenario, there's no way this is a 145 number. This line would have been more in the idea of at best, like 110, something like that, and probably a Skubal small favorite type scenario. But that's not the way it works in these scenarios. And Jeff and I just had a conversation about some things on the show previous to this one. And, he seems to think that, one of the things that the sports books are looking for is money to come in. They want money to be bet on Detroit. So that's why the line is the way it is. So they want underdog bets, which means that you're not supposed to bet on that team. You don't bet on the side that, if the sports book is setting a number where the line is inflated on one side to get action on the other side, they just want offsetting money. So you don't want to do it that way. You want to bet on the side that the sportsbook needs, which would be obviously the Astros in this case. But I think you're paying a premium, right? My number on the game was Houston minus 111. And I think that's the right number. I think it's a more fair number. So then you got to sit there and go, well, do I want to pay that price? So as then you look at the next game, and Baltimore is like minus 150. Well, they shouldn't be minus 150 over the Royals in that spot because, and we'll break these games down a little bit more. I'm just going over the numbers right this second. But if you look at that game, my number was 127 for Baltimore. The advantage Baltimore has in this is not the pitching. The starting pitching for Kansas City throughout the series is going to be better than what Baltimore throws out there. Baltimore will be competitive in that regard, but it's not necessarily better. Where they're going to be better is the offense. They're going to be much better in the offense. And good pitching in the playoffs kind of equalizes good offense a lot of times. So I think that line's out there. Milwaukee was minus 140 or something like that today. And I think that number's way off. Because I get it, it's Peralta, and he's the best pitcher that they have, and Severino's pitching for the Mets, and he's not the best pitcher that they have. But these two teams are not in the same – they're more in the same caliber of teams than the other matchups. So this is one of those spots where I have Milwaukee minus 107. So it's like a pick'em game. So, again, I think the favorite's overpriced. And even in the Padres game, it's minus 165, something like that. I have it 145. So I think your favorites are highly priced. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't bet them. You only have a certain number of games you can bet on, and certain ways that you can bet these games. So we'll look at some of that too. So let's look at the first game with Detroit and Houston, and we'll break this down in a way that says where's the advantages and what's going on. So the first thing you got to do is got to look at the pitchers. And in this particular case, you have Tariq Skubal, whose WAR is at 2.5. And I broke this down into the last half of the season. So he's at 2.5, and Framber Valdez is at 2.2. So it's not very far off. And Framber's been really, really, really good. And when you look at the numbers and how that shakes out, let me pull up my pitching report. Where is my pitching report? There it is. And I bring this over here. So Framber Valdez has pitched 28 times. He's 19-9 in those starts, or the Astros are 19-9 in those starts. And Skubal's pitched 31 times. They're 21-10. So not a lot of variance or difference there. These guys are going to go out expecting to win. The team is going to be expecting to win, and rightfully so. These are two really good pitchers. SOPS plus, meaning that how they control the opponent's offense on a scale of 100. Skubal's a 47. That means he's 53% better than an average pitcher. So really good at that. And Valdez is a 73, so 27% better than average pitcher. You should see that from your best pitchers. So these are going to be hard to score runs, hard to get on base, hard to do a lot of stuff with type pitchers. There is one major variance, though, as we look at these. And the major variance is the Detroit Tigers. They've gone on a big run. They were 15-5 last 20 games, 7-3 last 10 games, but they can't hit left-handed pitching. They're 35% worse than an average offense against left-handed pitching, and obviously that's what you're getting today, and you're getting one of the best left-handed pitchers that's available. So I think that creates a problem. And on the other side, the Astros are 74% better versus a left-handed pitcher than our normal offense is. So you've got to. So if you look at it and go, okay, Scooble's probably a little bit better, then you go and say, well, that gets offset because the Tigers probably aren't going to do much against Valdez, but it is possible that the Astros put up a pretty good fight on offense. And if they put up a pretty good fight, it also means that Scooble might not go as deep in the game. You know, you need Scooble to go 7 or 8 innings for them to have a chance. And if he can't go 7 or 8 innings and he only goes 5 or 6, now you got to put it up to the bullpen. And, you know, they got a pretty good bullpen, but there's some stuff behind that, which we'll get into. But there's still an edge there for the Astros on offense. So if I bring this out and I look at the starting pitchers and we kind of compare them, you know, XFIP, right? So fielding independent pitching predicted, meaning that, you know, how does the pitcher do out on the mound in controlling walks, home runs, and strikeouts, right? The things he can control. And if he's really good at that, then he doesn't need his defense, which is kind of the idea behind this, right? It has nothing to do with balls in play. So 2.67 for Scooble. It's elite. I mean, that's top in baseball. But Framber Valdez, 2.96. Those are basically identical numbers. So I think when you think about this and you look at it, you got to go, there's not really much edge there on the pitching front, even though Scooble is a Cy Young type guy. The Sierra number, now you got to remember, Sierra number is one that will include balls in play, and it's an advanced earned run average number. It's metric. Scooble's a 2.68, and for Framber's a 3.36. So a little bit difference there, but not by enough. They're both great. They're both in the top 25% best of baseball. So these two pitchers are really good. One of the major differences is going to be Scooble gets more strikeouts, so less balls in play. But on the back side of that, there's a big edge for damaging blows. And what I mean by damaging blows is Framber Valdez is a ground ball pitcher. He's the elite ground ball pitcher of all of Major League Baseball. Now, at the beginning of the season, he wasn't quite as good as maybe where he was before. He was 50% ground balls. So that's really good. That's top 25% of baseball, just being top 25, you know, being 50%. But that's not where Framber usually is. So over his last 28 days, over his last 30 days, he's a 66%, 66.7%. So 2 out of 3 balls that are hit, but put in play are on the ground. How are you going to have home runs, doubles? You know, I mean, you could hit a ball down the line, I suppose, but, you know, fly balls, line drives, hard hits, rate balls, those are what makes damaging blows. And Framber just, you know, nubs the ball off and ground balls and you're out, right? So I think where you see this game that's going to kind of happen here is, while these two pitchers are out there, I think offenses are going to struggle, both of them. I think you're going to see few runs. I think you're not going to see many guys on base. They don't walk guys much. So I think you're just going to see, you know, tough pitching. So how deep these guys go in the game is going to be critically important to the outcome of this particular game, because the difference is going to be one of these two pitchers, maybe both of them, are going to get in a spot where they got guys on second, third, and there's one out. And the difference is going to be when A.J. Hinch calls on his bullpen to get the out that he needs. He doesn't need a fly ball. He doesn't need a ground ball. He needs a strikeout. And they don't have a guy coming out of the bullpen that does that. Their bullpen is good. And let me pull it up for you to give you a good gauge of what that looks like. The Texas, Detroit ranks 7th out of 30 teams in the bullpen. That's really good. But when it comes to strikeouts per 9 innings, They're 29th out of 30 teams. They have 0 guys that are 9 strikeouts per 9 innings or more. And relief pitchers, that's what they do. There's a lot of guys that are double digits there. And they have 0 that are even 9. So they're in a spot where that means the ball is going to get hit. And if the ball gets hit, that's going to produce the run. So that guy on second and third, a ball gets hit, they scores the run. Maybe they get the out, but that's not what you want. You want the strikeout so that run doesn't come across. And A.J. Hinch doesn't have that guy. Now, I'm going to throw one caveat in there. There's a guy that's name is Jackson Jobe. Jackson Jobe is a highly touted prospect that Detroit has. He's a starting pitcher. Well, they called him up, and he's been throwing out of their bullpen. He's only thrown like 4 innings, so he hasn't hardly thrown at all. And if they were to call on him, there's a possibility that he would be that guy to get that strikeout. He throws 99, 100 miles an hour. I mean, he's that guy that they might have to do that. And he could be that guy that nobody knows about that makes it so that it's real competitive for Detroit. Could be. Have to see how he does and how he holds up and what that looks like. But as it is right now, they don't have a guy that can do that. Whereas Houston does. Houston has the 3rd ranked bullpen with strikeouts per 9 innings. They've got a guy that they can go get that'll come in and get the strikeout. And that's a major difference in this game. And it's a major difference in the series, because the other problem that you have when you look at it from a series perspective is the Astros are ranked first. They have the best pitchers, starting pitchers of all of them in the second half of the season, because you have Framber Valdez, a 2.2 WAR guy, Hunter Brown's a 2.1 WAR guy. So right there, back to back, great starting pitchers. And then you got Kikuchi, 1.4, and you can throw Arrighetti, and you can throw Blanco, whatever. Those guys are 1 WAR guys. The Tigers have 0, none, no one after Skubal. So their lineup's going to be Reese Olson, 0.1 WAR. They have Casey Mize as a minus WAR. Kiter Montana. They don't have guys. So balls in play, edges all over the place for Houston after this game. So this is a critically important game for Detroit. They're going to do everything they can do to win it. They have to do everything they can do to win it just to be a competitive series. I don't know that they can. I don't know that they can win. So I think the way you look at this, and we already said, hey, Detroit's got a problem against left-handed pitching. So they don't hit Framber. They have to have everything go right for Skubal. And then they have to be in spots where when Skubal comes out of the game, it's the start of a new inning where the pitcher can come in with nobody on base. And if all of those things kind of work right, they might be able to win this game. But if one of those things goes wrong, it's all edges Houston. It's Houston at home. It's Houston with the offense. It's Houston with the experience. It's the star power, and that matters. If look it up. If you go look at the top of the hits leaders, the home runs leaders, they're all Astros guys. And I get it, they've been there for a while and all that, but the stars shine, right? Altuve is a star among stars in the playoffs. Alvarez, star among stars. Bregman, those guys come through, and the Tigers have never been there. The Tigers have 0 starts from a starting pitcher in the playoffs. 0. AJ Hinch, manager, has been there a lot, and he's a good manager. So I think the only way the Tigers survive is AJ Hinch does everything possible to pull the right trigger, to put in the right pitcher, to get the right matchups, to make pinch hits, to do whatever he's got to do to keep his team close. and try to win. I mean, that's the only thing he can do, because he's outgunned, outmatched at every level, except for this starting matchup, and it's pretty close. So I don't like the line in this game. I don't like the Astros being a minus 150, so I would never bet that. So if you wanted to take a flyer and you wanted to take the other side and say, hey, I think, the Detroit Tigers plus money, okay, I'm okay with that. But the better way I think that you do this, and I've had a lot of back and forth in my head, is I think you bet the Houston Astros on the series. The Houston Astros are minus 170, minus 168, whatever it was. And you bet that. And because if Houston wins, you ain't going to bet them tomorrow. You're not going to bet them. They're going to be too high. If they lose, you can come back and bet them tomorrow on the series, and go, yeah, they're going to win 2 or whatever, and move on. They're gonna do this. So I think you have the ability to bet them that way if you wanted to, but if they win, you can't. So you miss out, and you're certainly not going to bet them at minus 150 today. I don't think that's the right way to do it. So what's the difference between 150 and 168? Not much, and you're also getting them to win the series, period. But if they win, you don't get them at all. And then you don't have a way to bet them. You got to bet other stuff. So that would be what I would tell you to do, is bet. And that's the way I bet. I bet this Houston Astros in the series price. I got 170, I think. And then I did make one other bet in this particular game. So I like the playoff games and betting hits plus runs plus errors over or under a number. And BetUS had this number at 23.5. And I bet under 23.5. So let me tell you how you get there. So first thing you got to do is, and let me get my calculator out so that we have this right. So the first thing you do is you look at the total. Total 6.5. So if you take 6.5 runs times 2.2, the reason you take 2.2, it takes to get one run, it takes 2.2 hits. So if I take 6.5 times 2.2, I get 14.3. So now I have 14.3. That's how many hits it takes to score those runs. Now I got to add the runs back in. So plus 6.5 runs. So now I'm at 20.8. So the number's 23.5, and I'm at 20.8. That gives me roughly 3 errors they can make in the game, and or an extra hit or two here or there. If they don't make any errors, I think it goes under the 23.5, because like I said, I don't think there's going to be a lot of hits. I don't think there's going to be a lot of runs in the beginning part of this game with both of these two pitchers. It might change up when the bullpens come in, but we get a little room for that. So I played hits plus errors, hits plus runs plus errors under 23.5 minus 115 at BetUS. So I like those kind of bets in these types of scenarios. I don't have to bet under 6.5. I don't have to bet all that stuff. I think it's more fun and it's more interesting, and it's charting out the numbers and looking at how it all kind of comes out and where you need to be. So I played under 23.5. So I think in today's matchup, that's what you do. You bet the Houston Astros in the series price. We don't have to bet them at all tomorrow. And we can look at hits plus runs and errors tomorrow. We can look at other things. We can do other stuff. And then you're covered. So that's how I see the Houston series. I think everything is an advantage to them. They played the Tigers 6 times this year, and they beat them 4 out of the 6 times. And I think they can beat them, again. The Baltimore Orioles in the Royals series, this is much different. Matchups much different. I'll first say it this way. The Baltimore Orioles played the Royals 6 times. The Orioles were 4-2 in the series. So they beat them, just like Houston did. And here's where I think there's a competitiveness to this series. when you look at this, the first place to start is starting pitching, right? So you go back and you look and say, okay, Baltimore ranks 10th in starting pitching, and the Royals, they rank third, I think. My computer just timed out, so let me get it to pop up here again. The Royals rank third. So Corbin Burns is a 1.1 WAR guy, and we just talked about how good Framber Valdez was and Tyreek Skubal. So he's half that. And he's going to face Reagans today as a 1.4. So theoretically, you have a better pitcher in Reagans than you do in Burns. And tomorrow's matchup would be Lugo, who's a 1.9, and he's facing Eflin, who's a 0.9 or a 1. And then you have Kramer, who's a 1.3, against Waka, who's a 1.7. So you have a better starting rotation matchup-wise for the Royals in this series. So that tends for you to sit there and go, I want that. And I don't blame you. When you have better pitchers, and especially in playoff games, that's what you want. There's one big, huge caveat to that. And that huge caveat is the Kansas City Royals rank 30th in baseball on offense. There's 30 teams. So that means they're dead last in offense. Offensively, the Royals are scoring 2.17 runs a game, and the Orioles are scoring basically 4.92. So that's a huge difference. That means the pitchers for Baltimore, even though they're not as good as the pitchers for Kansas City, don't have to be. They can be good and still get the outs that they need to get as long as they take care of Bobby Witt Jr. That's all they got to do. And on the other side, as good as those pitchers are for the Royals, they're not two WAR guys, meaning that they're not huge strikeout guys. I mean, Reagans is, but the others aren't. So balls are going to be put in play. Balls put in play means defense has to get involved. You got to make outs. You got to do different things. The edges all go to the Orioles that way. And because the Royals didn't do anything at the break, the All-Star break, and right prior to the trade deadline to bring in bats, the reality becomes is they don't match up. So that creates a problem. Now, they do have one guy that they really picked up at the trade deadline that has helped them dramatically. He's the best bullpen piece that is in the playoffs right now, and that's Eric Ursic. I'm not sorry, Lucas Ursic. He's a one WAR guy in the play, and he's really good. And he goes out and throws, close to 100 miles an hour. I think he's going to have to throw every inning that they have or whatever to help them get through those spots. Because they're going to be similar to Detroit. They're not as good in the bullpen as Detroit is, and they don't have strikeout guys, so balls are going to be put in play. And these pitchers need to leave the bullpens in spots where they're good. So I think that you run into some kind of issues, right? So the key here is Baltimore is really good against right-handed pitching. They're a little less against left-handed pitching, and they only got one lefty, and he's pitching today. So it's Reagans today, and the matchup's pretty good for the Orioles. So even though they got their best pitcher and lefty going today, and then they got better pitchers, right-handers going after that, the Orioles are better against right-handed pitching than they are left-handed pitching. In fact, the Baltimore Orioles against right-handed pitching are 11 runs above average against that. And, it's just one of these things where you got to sit there and go, it's just such a dominant edge on offense for them. They have trouble in the bullpen too. Baltimore does. So there's not a strong, super big edge anywhere for Baltimore, but there's big enough edges that you sit there and you go, how can you possibly bet on the Royals offense to win a series when they can't score more than 2 runs a game? You can't, because you need to score more than 2 runs a game to win these games. So the way I think you bet this is you don't go out and bet the Orioles every day at -150. I mean, that's not how you do it. But in this particular game, the way that I got a number of 145, 140, I think you bet Burns. I think this game you bet Burns. The next game that comes out is going to be too far. It's going to be too. But I also don't think that you want to bet them in the series, because I really do think the Royals are going to be competitive enough that they're going to give this a run, and there's a possibility that this goes the full distance. And if it goes the full distance, anything can happen in the last game. But I think Burns is good, and I think Burns is good enough today. The numbers on that game, pitchers wise, is really what turned me, because if I go look at, I got to get the right spreadsheet up. Here we go. So Burns is a 3.26 xFIP, 3.41 Sierra, 277 FIP. Top 25% of all of baseball. One of the best pitchers that they have in the game. Reagan's is a 392, 404, 305. All of those metrics are middle of the pack. They're not elite. They're not great. And the big thing that I think you run into with Reagan's is this. When stuff gets bad for him, he can't get out of it. He's a young kid that hasn't got that mental toughness thing to overcome bad things that happen in baseball games. If you got guys on base, they're going to score. So his analysis comes down to, he's made 32 starts. The Royals are 16-16, and that's what you get. You get an average performance from him. Whereas Burns has made 32 starts, and the Orioles are 20-12. Like, he wins the games, and I think that's where it's really important to understand the difference between why you have these kind of guys and you pay them, even though he's got diminished stuff compared to what Reagan's does. Reagan's got great stuff. So I think that's where you're going with it. And in the last 28 days, SOPS plus wise, nobody's better than nobody on today's lineup on all the pitchers today. I just told you how good Scuba was, 47, 53% better than average pitcher. Nobody's better than Corbin Burns. He's a 38. So he's 62% better than average pitcher. I'll take that. Give me that, and give me the Orioles at home today, and then I'll deal with the Orioles and the Royals tomorrow. I don't want to play the series price because I think it could be the other. So I know there's guys out there that, and I thought it was a decent bet, and I thought, well, it's possible that the Royals just get there. They don't have any experience in the playoffs. The manager doesn't have any experience in the playoffs. Maybe they get rode out just like the Orioles did last year, and boom, boom, and they're gone. So I think this is one of those spots where I don't want to play this over 2.5 games. And I saw that as a bet, and I thought, well, that sounds like it might be legit. And then you don't have to pick the winner; it just has to go those ways, and then they have to split the 2 games. So that's very possible that it'll do that, but it's also, I think, taking a lot of consideration that the Orioles aren't going to hit, and that the Royals are going to figure out a way to win a game. And that might be, but I'm not going to bet it that way. I'm just going to take Baltimore in this game. The next game is the Mets and the Brewers, and this is one of those games where I think it's just priced wrong. Milwaukee A is the favorite in the series, and they should be. They're the division winner, and they're home. But B, they're not that good. So I think the Mets can win this series. I bet the Mets in the series, plus 115 is what I bet, which means then I don't have to bet them every day and see how that comes out. So I bet the Mets in the series, and there's a couple reasons for that. A, the Brewers have no pitchers. So if I go look at the pitching, how it comes out here, The Brewers, where's Milwaukee? They're there. There's 30 teams. Their starting pitching ranks 24th out of 30. They have their best pitcher is Tobias Myers, 1.1 WAR guy. So he can get beat at any time. Their guy they're going to throw, Peralta, he's a 0.4 WAR guy. Savali is a 0.5 WAR guy. Frankie Montas, 0.5 WAR guy. Those are all beatable guys. And the Mets, they're going to throw Severino today, 1.1 WAR. So he's pitched better. And then B, you follow him up with like Manaea, who's a 1.3 WAR guy. I think you sit there and go, they can win these games. They have the better pitchers. Second to having the better pitchers, they've got the better offense. When you think about offensively, the Mets rank ninth in isolated power, ninth in weighted on base percentage, 4.2 runs better than an average offense. Milwaukee, they quit hitting. They rank 24th in isolated power, 23 in weighted on base percentage. They are minus 13.5 runs to an average offense. So there's a big difference there. And I look at that and go, well, that's okay if they got star power. Who's their major guy that can come in and do the stuff? They don't have one. I mean, they don't have those guys. I mean, you can sit there and tell me about Contreras, and you can talk to me about Adames and, Hoskins and all those guys that they have. That they win because their team wins. That gets you through 162. That's a total different philosophy than how you get through a series and how these guys come through, right? You just saw it. Lindor hits the home run yesterday, star power, they win, they move on. The Mets have star power. Mark Flood says, hey, go Tigers. Look, I think the Tigers are a great story. I think they're a great story. I think they're overmatched, but I think it's a great story. I think everybody's pulling for the Tigers. The guy that helps me run some of this stuff, the guy I'm on his network on, he likes the Tigers. But I think in this spot where the underdog series to bet on is the Mets. I think the Mets are in that spot where they can win it. I think they have the better starting pitching. I think they have the better offense. I don't think they have the better bullpen, but I don't know that they're going to need it. We'll see how it all plays out. It'll be very competitive, but I, instead of sitting there going, playing, and you might even go and say, well, like when Manaea pitches or something, you might want to go and say, yeah, I want to play that, because the Brewers are really a good team against right-handed pitching and not so much against lefties. So when Manaea pitches, you want to bet the Mets. So if the Mets are underdogs in that game, maybe you bet the Mets, but you don't have to because you played them on the series. So I think that's the better way to go there. And then the San Diego situation is just a mess for the Braves. It's one thing to have to battle back the way they battled to get to a point where they had to overcome that loss and then win to get in and find out that your best pitcher, Cy Young National League guy, Chris Sale, is not going to be available. And now he's not available for this series. Man, they're in trouble. They're throwing Ian Anderson. Now, I'm not going to say Ian Anderson's a bad pitcher, but he's been in the minor leagues all season. He made 26 starts, 28 starts. What is it? Let me look. I have the numbers right here. So let's see what it says. He pitched 68 innings, gave up 58 hits, 26 runs, earned run average 3.44. It's pretty good for minor league baseball. Now that's encompassing single A, double A, and triple A. It's not all triple A stuff. And you would think, they've needed pitching all year. Schwellenbach pitched. So Ian Anderson certainly could have took that spot. Elder pitched. Well, they could have had Ian Anderson pitch. They didn't. Why didn't they? Well, because he wasn't good enough. So now they have him because they don't have anybody else. And the reality is he hasn't pitched in the big leagues for 2 years. 2022, he pitched in the big leagues. So we'll see how this works out for them. I don't like the matchup that way. King's been really good for the Padres. I think he can do wonders out there. I think the Padres offense is good. So let's look at it this way. The Padres, where's my numbers? Go back to this screen. And so Padres, they rank 4th in starting pitching. They rank 3rd in the bullpen, and they rank top 10 in offense. Not one other team can say that. I mean, the Yankees can't say that. The Guardians can't say that. The Phillies can't say that. None of them. The Dodgers, they're the best rounded, well-rounded team available in the playoffs. And I get it. They didn't win the division, but the Braves are in such a mess, and the Padres are in great spot. I think you can do two things, right? Like I bet the Braves in the series. I bet the Padres in the series. I paid $180 with the idea that I wasn't going to bet, each individual game. I'm just going to play them in the series. But then I looked at it and go, well, how can I not bet it today? So I bet it today too. I think I paid minus 160. I don't want to pay these numbers, but at the same time, I want to get my bets in and I want to win these games. So I think that when you think about where the Braves are and how much bullpen usage they've had, and the games they've just played, and now they got to go play right now today and fly out. It's just a disadvantage to them. So I think the Padres are sitting there waiting. I think they've got the best balanced team, and I think they go out and they make mincemeat of the Braves. So I think the way I would look at these is you want to bet Houston in the series. I think you want to bet the Mets in the series. I think you want to bet the Padres in the series. I think you want to bet Baltimore and Kansas City day by day. And then I think you want to bet some odds and ends and kind of things you look at. Like I really like that under 23.5 runs plus hits plus errors with the Detroit and Houston game today. And then we kind of look at it from there and we see. So one of the other things I saw that was kind of coming out, and so hopefully I still have it up because I close a lot of these windows. There we go. So, the Dodgers are plus 360 to win the World Series. The Yankees 425, Phillies 475. Those are your three favorites. And then it goes Astros 800, Guardians 950, Padres 1,000. So I think if you wanted to take a shot in the American League, I don't mind the Astros as your shot because the Astros are going to match up to the Yankees, and they are going to match up to the Guardians, whoever they play next series, if they make it through this series. They're going to be the ones that can win and get through it. They've got the experience and they've got the pitchers. The Padres are the same way. They're plus 1,000. So if you wanted to take those two as kind of your shots, I would say that's kind of the way to go. The way I think it's going to go is I think the Phillies are going to come out, because I think what you're going to see, and they're plus 475, so I don't mind that number. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see juice with the Phillies. You're going to see that time of year where Schwarber is just ready, rocking and rolling. Harper's rocking and rolling. Turner's going crazy. I think you got Bohm that's going to be, doing well. Castellano, those guys are going to hit in these type of scenarios, and when things are bad, they come up with the big hits and drive them in. I mean, that's what they do, and the Dodgers have those guys too, but they don't got it. I don't know what the Dodgers are going to do pitching wise. They're not going to match up. Yamamoto's been decent, but he hasn't been worth $1 billion kind of guy, and Flaherty is hittable, so they don't match up. Wheeler's going to be dominant over either one of those two. So I kind of like the idea that the Phillies can win against any of those teams. And on the other side, I think you're going to see Yankees come out. I don't know why. I think Garrett Cole's getting back to Garrett Cole. He's had his last few starts were really good. I think Rodon can pitch the way he needs to pitch to get outs, and if not, they just find a way. But I think it's hard to overcome Soto, and I think it's hard to overcome Judge. You can't walk them both. So I think they're going to those two are just dynamic players that probably will come out. So I kind of seem to think you're going to see Yankees Phillies. If you see Yankees Phillies, my opinion, that's way, way better than what you saw last year with Rangers Diamondbacks. I don't want to take anything away from fans of those teams, but the quality of team, the quality of wins and season, I think makes this payoff a little better this season than it would have for that. So I think that's kind of what I would look at there on the bigger picture of things. So my plan basically is to do these about 12:30 as we have early day game starts, and as they transition, we'll go back to doing later starts. I'll be on Jeff's show too periodically. He's gonna, I'll be dropping in and doing some baseball work in there. So anyway, it didn't get a lot of questions or anything asked of me too much today, but feel free. Mark Flood, great, thank you. He made a comment, go Tigers. I'm looking for that kind of stuff, guys. Communication, talk, put some comments in, ask questions. I'll be glad to break stuff down. I had a comment yesterday on the preview show about Kansas City and whether or not Pasquantino being available makes a difference. And the answer to that question is sure he does. He's a bat, and that looking at their lineup now, their lineup's a lot longer. So maybe that makes them a little more competitive. Maybe it makes them where they have a spot against the Orioles. So you just gotta kind of look at stuff and think it through. Like even for Houston, Alvarez can't hardly walk, but he's going to play. And if he can hit home runs and hit doubles, you don't have to walk. He can crawl around the bases or whatever. So anyway, food for thought. So I'm planning on tomorrow, say 12:30ish, about the same time. See how it all plays out schedule wise for the network that I'm using here to get on these shows, and then as we kind of go through them, maybe a little later for the ones that start later in the week. So again, say this all the time. Follow me on Twitter. I post the stuff out there so you can keep up with the shows and kind of the breakdowns and stuff. If you like what you hear and you want to pay for the services and stuff, it costs you $100. It's a whole year. It's not like I charge you $20 a week or $20 a month or any of that. So it's $100 for a whole season. It includes football, all of it, whatever I do. I'm not trying to make money off of you guys. It just helps run the business, so to speak. So it's $100. Just go to the website, click on the buttons. I think there's a button that says something to the effect of membership sign up. It's $100. No big deal. But other than that, let's have a great day. I'm looking forward to hours upon hours of hopefully quality good baseball, and we see some good games and some fun things. And I will catch up with everybody again tomorrow. So have a great one. Matt says, go Kansas City. There you go.